giving him a good push. That's Sargent. And Theriault is out in front, and he's down to the bottom. Theriault has cleared Jones. He is in the lead at Daytona.
Well, good evening, folks. This is our Zoom class and senior college. And tonight really is a kind of a special class. I mean, they're all special, but this one is kind of unique in that it's featuring a personality and somebody from Fort Kent that has made it at the national level. And it wasn't that many years ago that even some of the people that are here, the participants, were instructors, and they taught Austin. And you know, here he is. Now he's presenting to us and to a subject that is interesting to us, but we're going to find out a lot more about tonight, and that's NASCAR racing and auto racing in general. So without any further introduction, this is Austin Theriault, all the way from North Carolina, thanks to Zoom. And Austin, the class is yours.
Well, thank you, Donald, for the invitation and for inviting me. I was excited to have the opportunity to present tonight. And if you could actually make sure that I'm able to share my screen, if you could give me permission to do that. I won't immediately jump into it, but I just kind of want to take a second I'm sure some of you know, or most of you know, I was born in Fort Kent. My parents are Terry and Steve Theriault. My grandfather's Richard and Betty on the Theriault side, and then on my mother's side, it's Janine Neto and Leo Neto, which he's passed. He passed away the year I was born, actually. So very much rooted in Fort Kent with the French Acadian ancestry and background. And when I tell my story, I think sometimes I leave that out because people don't always understand where I came from. And as best I can, I've been able to, I think, spread a little bit more awareness of all the history that's come from Maine and Aroostook County and St. John Valley, to as many people as I can. And when I talk to people about specifically Maine, but even you'd be very surprised about the people that know of Aroostook County. And I don't exactly know why that is. All I can say is that as people have moved away from the area, they've really spread their wings in a lot of different areas of the country. And I'm trying to think of a particular story I can't identify right now, but even as early as maybe 2013 or 2014, people would joke around with me, and the word on the street was that I was from Canada, that I was a Canadian, but I'm not. I'm not a Canadian. But to them, we may sound like we are, but we're not. And I think it's very interesting when people learn about where I'm from and all the story behind it. So I wanted to start with that because I think it's a story that adds a lot of flavor or adds some interest in every driver who's ever driven, right? Everybody has a story. There's some drivers that come from California, some drivers come from Florida. The Carolinas for a while were very was the hotbed of racing. That's where NASCAR started. And all the way back during Prohibition, I'm sure some people have seen the documentaries about that's how NASCAR started was during Prohibition. They used to race the cars, and whoever could get away from the police when they were being chased and they upgraded their cars and stuff. But ultimately, once that passed away, you had all these people that liked speed and they liked the competition. So they created basically a series that was, professionally run to be able to race, and it took off very quickly. I think in the 50s and 60s, and this was back before live TV. And I'm not as up to date on the history of NASCAR as I should be. And I grew up in a weird generation where I had a lot of veterans that I looked up to, who had been involved in the sport, but they were almost the second or third generation from the beginning of the sport. I wasn't there. I wasn't even born when all of this started. So there's a lot of, interesting stories. I think if you look back and you're thinking about the Petties are a big name in racing. Richard Petty, Dale Earnhardt, but believe it or not, there's a whole kind of half of a generation before them that made it all possible for them to be famous. So I guess fast forward to 2007, I was, I think, in middle school. I was 13, I believe, at the time, and Spud Speedway in Limestone in Caribou had just opened up, and most people know that they had a base there, right? And it was always popular. There's always people there, but when the base closed down, I think it became more difficult to attract people, drive all the way out there to see auto racing. And so it had been opened and closed and opened up again and closed again. And it was like say every 10 years there was activity, and then it would die down again. Well, it just so happened that I'm going to take control of the screen. And so I talked a little bit about the car. This is something I bought all the way down, I think, in Scarborough, because there's a track down in Scarborough, Maine called Beach Ridge Motor Speedway. That car had been raced there. I don't have a picture of the car I had before that I originally started with. A lot of history in this car. This was actually a big step up in my involvement in racing. I was not professional, obviously, at the time that this picture was taken. This was a hobby. This was something fun to do on the weekends.
Was this in 2008?
This was 2008 or 2009. Yeah, 2008, I believe. 2008. And because I started at that track in 2007, I think late summer, fall, and finished that year. And then I think in May or April of 2008, I bought this car. And my grandfather, Richard, actually bought the car that I had before this car. And, it was kind of a piece of junk, but it still got me involved, and it still got me, got my foot in the door, basically.
Plus,
does anybody have questions at this point?
You were racing cars at 14?
Yeah, actually, I started at 13.
So you don't even have a license?
Correct. You don't have a license at that point. There's a specific class that usually that age group will run. It's together with their age group. So you don't have 18 or 40-year-olds racing against 13-year-olds. You have 13, maybe 12, 13, 14, 15-year-old kids who don't have a lot of experience racing together. Now, you'd think that was maybe more dangerous, but it's actually less dangerous because the experience level is kind of what determines how fast you're going to go. So there's not a huge discrepancy in speed. The cars are sort of all together and whatnot. You don't have one car coming fast and, taking out another car or hitting another car. So this is 2008. I'm going to go back for a second and go to this picture here. And that's in 2009. So in one whole year from that, when the other picture was taken till now, when that, I think August 30, 2009, I had built another car. It was a 4-cylinder Mustang, from the ground up. Like it was off the road because it didn't pass inspection. And me and a friend, an older friend, stripped it down, put a roll cage in it, and went and ran all of 2019 at Spud Speedway. And I think we won a championship. I won a championship in that series where it's mainly young kids. They used to call it the Young Guns division. At the end of this year, we went south again and bought this car, this 57 car. It's actually a purpose-built car. It's not like a Neon or a Mustang. This is like you can see there's a piece of metal right near, like there's a mirror on the side, and you see like a white piece of metal, looks like tubes. So that's actually a purpose-built car for racing. It's never been on the road. There's a performance engine in it. It's made to go fast. It's made to race on the racetrack. That was a big step for my career. I think at this point I'd maybe been 8, 9, 10. I think I was would be a sophomore in high school. No, 8, 9. Yeah, I should have been around. I think a sophomore in high school when all this was happening. Maybe a freshman. And I'm still going to school and have other commitments there. I think I was involved in different activities at school, and I was also doing wrestling and whatnot. So it was really a little bit difficult for me to manage it all. And because at the same time I moved past Spud Speedway. I started, after this picture was taken, it was one of the last races that I did racing at Spud Speedway for a whole season. I started traveling to different parts of New England, and I don't have a good picture of that, but I'll go back to that. I started traveling and racing in New Hampshire, Connecticut, Vermont, New York, or upstate New York, actually some parts of Quebec, near Quebec City, I think maybe in Ontario. And really kind of becoming more of a I guess I call it a prospect, becoming more of a prospect to, let me go back here, stop sharing the screen for a second, became more of a prospect, somebody that was really trying to take this very seriously. And in order to move up throughout the ranks, you have to start traveling, because there's not a lot of attention. There wasn't a lot of attention at Spud Speedway. It's a racetrack where people went to have fun, and all that was great. But we wanted to do bigger and better things, and I had to just get in front of more people and racetracks kind of south of Aroostook County, and where there's a little bit more people. That took me all the way till 2012. I was still racing those late models in 2012, and had met some pretty interesting people. I'm going to take back control of the screen. Yeah, this wasn't taken in 2020, but the point of that is, as you start working your way up through the ranks and racing and stuff, you kind of meet people that are pretty influential or well known and stuff in different parts of the racing community, and even in business and whatnot. So I'm senior in high school, and I'm having to make all these very difficult decisions. Do I want to just kind of leave racing, even though there's some opportunities for me, and just go to college and maybe take over a business? Or at one point I was really interested in politics. I thought about pursuing that and actually going to college and Washington, D.C. And it's a very difficult decision for me to make around all that time. I decided to basically pack up the car and head down to Charlotte. I knew a few people, and I had a race shop that I was working in during the week, and on the weekends we were racing. Had decent success actually. Those couple years, I think that was 2013 and 2012 and 2013. Had some pretty good success and met a bunch of people, but it was still, I mean, it's a big thing for somebody that's leaving a small town with 5,000 people and going to this big area where you don't know a lot of people, and it's kind of a city, but yet it still felt like country, because you can actually get outside of Charlotte and it feels like more of a rural area. So I actually, kind of a funny story, when I was picking apartments, I didn't want to be in the city. So I ended up picking an apartment probably 20 minutes or 30 minutes outside of the city, near like a small body of water. And I wanted it to feel like home. You know, if you stood on the back porch, you could see the water and you could see the trees. And at least it was like a transition for me, going from what I was used to into what I was doing at the time. And I pull up this picture because the person that you can't see, the gentleman's name is Bob Baer. He owned the Speedway in Loud, New Hampshire, and was certainly somebody that I looked up to. You can't see him too, but Bob's got the yellow vest on, and he's facing somebody who you can kind of see his hair. Ken Squire. If anybody's ever watched NASCAR racing, even for a few minutes back in the 80s, I'm thinking 90s, Ken was a TV personality, and he was very well known, very, very good at what he did. And on the left side of him is a guy named Marcus Smith, who owns a bunch of racetracks, actually here in Charlotte, but they own racetracks around the country. So around all this time, I'm getting to know some of these people, and doors are starting to open, and some of it happened pretty quickly. Other things kind of took a lot of time to come together. But I was very fortunate to have met a lot of people along the way. And I guess I can't talk enough about it, because I think it's like that with anything that you do in life. You have people that come along who you maybe sometimes they're mentors, other times you might mentor them, or it's kind of like a collaboration where they help open up a door for you, but you can give them something in return. And that's actually how sponsorship comes about in racing. It's like a trade you're trading services, you're trading marketing services. Let me take back the screen. You're trading marketing services. You can see here in the background, I'm at New Hampshire Motor Speedway in 2014, I think, making my NASCAR debut at this particular racetrack in the Nationwide Series. And you see there's different sponsors on my suit, and there's a logo here in the background. I'm not sure what it was, but basically they sponsored the racetrack and they put on the race. And I was sponsored by some different groups at that time, but they put faith in me that I was going to be able to help expand their reach, to be able to reach more people. And in turn, they supported the team that I raced for, and I was able to pursue a career and move up the ranks. So it's very much a give and take, and it can sometimes be stressful. Like I said, you're always on the edge of being told you've lost a sponsor, or you've something may happen to where you're sort of needing to find another opportunity. And that's what racing can seem like sometimes, but yet we all keep coming back for more, because I think the pull of competition is really I think if you ask most people in any professional sport, it's not only the competition with other people, but it's like the competition with yourself, of trying to constantly improve. Now, I'm not going to go through all these pictures, but I want to just take a second and run through everything until now. And I may let the video kind of proceed without stopping, but I might just kind of stop where I left off in the timeline. So this is a video that one of the racing series put together. It was played in 2017 in Indianapolis, I think, at a banquet in Indianapolis. I had just won a championship, and the group had tried to bring together all of my race footage from back in 2007 all the way up until that time. And they made kind of a montage of some pretty cool videos, and they combined them all together. So let me know if you can hear it, or I want to make sure that it comes through properly. And the funny thing is, in this video, you can hear my grandmother yelling in the background. I don't know who's on the camera. Somebody's on the camera. I think maybe it's her or my mother, but you can hear her yelling in the background. And this is the beginning right here.
Ladies and gentlemen, Austin Theriault.
Yeah, I'd like to thank everyone that helped put this car together. Barney Insurance, Legal Oil, TNT Road Company, Northern Timber, M&M Service Station. It's really fun to be racing with these guys. You know, they're clean and I have fun.
You know I'm not one to break promises. I don't want to hurt you, but I need to breathe. At the end of it all, you're still my best friend. But there's something inside that I need to release.
Looked like Theriault wanted to get down to the inside in behind Mitchell, but he's just going to drive it in there hard.
That I need to move on.
They're side by side, bumping and banging down the backstretch of Michigan, and Theriault forces his way into the lead.
And it feels like I am just too close to love you.
Just wanted to feel it out. I mean, this is all new to me, and I didn't want to tear up a good piece. You know, that's why we were conservative qualifying, and we just rode around for about half the race. And
I can't handle more, got to be true to myself. And it feels like I am just too close to love you.
I'm just going through some of the early stuff because as really important it was. There's been so much that's happened lately that basically this picture right here in 2014 was when I went, I guess you could say, professional racing, and that's a whole different ball game. There's more pressure. I think at this race I was driving for Dale Earnhardt Jr. in one of his cars, and you know, and it was a lot. It was a really big bite to chew, or to. It was a big undertaking. Was my point, and it was a challenge, and it was in some cases almost a little bit too much for what I was actually ready for. And I think that could sometimes be the story of anybody that goes into business or politics or, you know, industry and any job. At the beginning, there's moments where you have to kind of take a breath and reset. And I would say 2014 was kind of that year for me, where at the end of the year, I was a little bit frustrated. I wish I would have performed better. I didn't have a lot of chances because they were all limited. Like, I was racing only like once. I was racing at that level. I was doing some other racing on the side, but at that high level, I was racing only probably once every couple months, and it was really hard to get in a rhythm. Racing's about being confident in your team and yourself, and you have to be racing a lot. It's like riding a bike, except once you learn how to ride a bike, they say you can't forget, but there's a difference between being, you know, somebody that can take, that can go on a mountain bike trail and, you know, ride it in 10 minutes or compared to somebody that has to take 20 minutes or an hour. So there's a huge difference between knowing how to do something and knowing how to do something well. And that just comes from experience and time. And I was a rookie and trying to get my confidence up. The next year started with me racing for a former Cup Series champion, Brad Keselowski. He was originally from Michigan, and he races for Roger Penske. Roger Penske is kind of somebody that's well known in racing, but he's also well known in business, because if you ever seen a Penske rental truck on the road, then that's the same type. That's the guy that owns the race team as well. And so, you know, once again, I kind of taken a breath, a reset, and went racing that year kind of with a fresh perspective, and ended up in my debut at Daytona finishing, I think we led a bunch of laps and finished third or fourth to my teammate who won. So it was really we were off to a good start. And I want to take you through a lap of what it looks like to be behind the wheel. Can you hear, Donald?
Yeah, I can now.
Okay.
Sounds good.
Every track's a little bit different. This was actually a very short track. It's just a few minutes outside of Nashville in Tennessee. And it was a test session, so there wasn't anybody else on the racetrack. Gives you an idea of if you've ever seen like a race at Daytona where you're basically, you know, on a track that's over 2.5 miles long. So imagine walking that. You'd only have to walk it once, and you for sure be tired. And if you walked it a few more times, you get your workout for the week. As compared to this type of racetrack, that video you just watched, that would only be a half a mile racetrack. So a huge difference between the length of the racetracks and the speed and even what I feel like in the race car. You can see that I'm putting my seatbelts on. I'm going to pause it to kind of take you through. You've got a helmet on. You see those wires, those red wires basically are hooked up. I have earphones or earbuds that are in my ear. This other red wires hooking up to the seat, so I can talk to the crew. I can talk to the person who's sort of guiding me around the racetrack. The steering wheel actually comes off. You see it laying there on the left side of the screen. So I have to take the steering wheel off in order to get out of the car, because the door doesn't open, and there's sort of a net that they have to put up on that side, because if you ever have to get out quickly, you just take down that net and get out. But you're surrounded by, you know, foam. There's a whole headrest that's carbon fiber, and then there's the foam on the inside. Same thing with the seat. You can't really see the seat, but all you can see is that basically I can't move side to side. And I cannot really move forward and back because I have those seat belts. I have 3 different belts on the bottom. I have 2 belts on the side, and then I have 2 belts on the top. And I'm wearing like it's a fireproof layer underneath my helmet. So, for example, if the car ever caught fire, I have my shield down. It's up right now, but I can put my shield down, and I have gloves on. I just take the gloves off so I can, you know, grab all that stuff better when I'm putting it on. But there's a thing around my neck, so that's fireproof as well. All that stuff in there is fireproof. I mean, it'll at least give me 10 to 15 seconds, I think, of being on fire until obviously till it burns through. But that can be the difference between, life and death. I don't want to sound that dramatic, but I think you can pull up videos on YouTube of drivers that were not lucky back in before I was racing. I think especially like back in the IndyCar days, and the 60s and 70s. I mean, those were rough years for those drivers. And you hate to talk about it, but the good news is that it's come such a long way. But with all that said, it still can be dangerous. And I was racing in 2015, and I'll go back to the video that I started in a second. I was racing in 2015. And that was the last year before they mandated that all the racetracks have two layers of walls. The first one is a steel wall in between layers of foam, and then a concrete wall. And that was a huge advancement in safety, because when you hit a wall that doesn't have any absorbing material, all the energy goes through the race car. And because I'm attached to this race car through the belts, the energy goes through the driver. There's certain other safety features that you can't see, and I can't really, it's not that I don't want to get into, but you can't see them, that protect my head, so it can't come too far forward because there's no airbags to stop you. It's all attached to the belts. The point being is, I was involved in an incident in 2015, and it hit the wall pretty hard in Las Vegas. Anybody that's kind of followed my career knows that I had that, and I had to take some time off to recover from that. And I'll play it in a second. And certainly I believe it or not, it didn't scare me, but it was scary in the moment, but it didn't scare me, and I was able to move on after that. And the technology of those walls have come such a long way that it's almost like if I could have waited an extra year, that I wouldn't have been as hurt as I was, because the foam layer in between the walls would absorb the impact and spread it sideways instead of through the race car. And let me find that video right here.
So I'll be on my way.
And then what you're going to see here is, after I took basically a year off, I came back and went full-time racing in the ARCA Series, which is a national series that runs across the country, and race for I guess a well-known racer. If anybody knows NASCAR, there's a gentleman, his name's Kenny Schrader. He used to run in the top levels of the sport, and he retired. I can't remember what year, sometime in the 2000s, but he kept race cars, and he's still heavily involved in the sport. I went to race for him. So as you can see, like, the video went from such a very heavy moment to kind of like the start of a whole another chapter for me.
Just too close to love you. There's nothing I can really say. I can't lie no more. I can't lie no more. Got to be true to myself. And it feels like I am just too close to love you. So I'll be on my way.
Just the fact that we were able to overcome a lot of challenges, man, this is amazing. We've kind of been down the past half hour, but to be honest, just looking at the trophy and the guys back here, it pumps us right back up. We've had a tremendous year. Got to thank so many people, and you know, the Schraders and the Cunninghams and Donnie Richardson. I mean, I could name them one by one. I'll try to do it at the banquet, but tonight's about them and what we've been able to accomplish, and it's just been tremendous. And the support back home and the people that have followed us all year.
You know I'm back, like I never left. Another sprint, another step, another day, another breath. Been chasing dreams, but I never slept.
Well, it's tremendous is the first word that comes to mind. Since we rolled in the gates at Daytona, you know, I had a good feeling about the season, and there's so much that can happen throughout the season because, you know, I've raced probably 10 years, but this is the highest level I've been as far as at a national series racing full time. And you know, we rolled in victory lane, and at that point, I knew that this is real, and we had a lot we had to achieve. But as long as we just did what we could do and try to minimize our mistakes, we were going to be in a position to win races and hopefully win a championship, and that's the way it turned out.
77 is giving him a good push. That's Sargent. And Theriault is out in front, and he's down to the bottom. Theriault has cleared Jones. He is in the lead at Daytona.
And some of those wins, you know, we were looking and very excited to have a good top 3 or 4 finish right at the end of the race when sometimes the restarts got pretty exciting. But that's where Austin's experience and track position and just he was able to take advantage of some opportunities there.
Sargent off the race course, Tiff nowhere to go in the 28, so 1-2 gets taken out, 1-2 gets taken out again, and now it looks like Austin Theriault is our leader on course. Can't pack up a U-Haul and take it with you when you go.
I've told people, I said, when you look at it just from a statistical standpoint, I think on the 20 race season, he's probably going to score more points than any driver in a current 20 race season. Grabbing all the extra awards that go along with it. The only award we're not going to get is a lap leader award, you know, and that describes our season.
Glorious, glorious, got a chance to start again.
One thing about Austin, he's a person, as I've noticed growing up, he's not afraid to do something different. So the family wasn't involved in racing. So I think that was an opportunity for Austin to set the bar. Well, I'm actually can prove myself in racing, or I have an opportunity to do something that the family hasn't done. And when he puts his mind to doing something, he focuses his wholeheartedly and has dedicated basically his young adult life to racing.
Green drifts up high, brushes the wall. Smith grabs second, but Theriault is going to take the checkered flag. Austin Theriault wins for the 7th time in 2017.
Really wanted to be in that position and get to Daytona victory lane, and you know, we've just accomplished a lot. So it's been fun. It's been everything you could ever imagine. You know, like I said, there's been times where it's like, hey, you know, you want to tell somebody smarten up, but we've pulled through that, and here we are, just in the position to run for a championship, run for wins, and you know, looks like we're in the right position and going to get the championship.
So I thought that was one of a couple of good videos that I've had put together, that people have put together for me over the years, and certainly what that video left out was kind of some of the earlier racing. You saw the truck series racing, which is a NASCAR series, but there's more content there. I have another video I might share if there's time. Does anybody have? I probably shouldn't do this, but I think I've covered so much that I'd like to basically make sure that people understand everything that I've talked about up until this point. Don't have to ask questions if everything's good, but if you certainly have questions about the timeline or, you know, things that you've seen along the way and want clarification, I can go through some of that now, and then I'll cover more of the business side and the latest developments once that's over with.
I have a question.
Mm-hmm.
Do you have to practice getting in and getting out of your car in case it's on fire? Is that part of the training?
Well, that's something that I think a driver has to learn really early because it's really important. But I wish there was more emphasis put on that because well, it doesn't even have to be a young driver, but if you went to a race at Spud Speedway, and they're not really even open anymore, but if you went to any local racetrack around the country, safety is a conversation and a topic, but it's not as talked about as I think I would personally like. They've come a long way though. So drivers have to have uniforms that are fireproof. They have certain restraints that protect your neck from coming too far forward in a crash. You have to have gloves and helmets, and you can't just go to Walmart and buy a helmet. It's supposed to be certified for racing and crash tested and all that stuff. But something as simple as getting out of a car when there's a fire or there's a crash, it's as weird as it sounds, to me it's hard to prepare for that, because when it happens, your adrenaline is pumping, and your body does weird things when that's happening. Like it's almost like the difference between thinking about doing something and practicing it, but then actually when there's people watching you, you have to get on stage, you're going to sweat and you're going to be nervous. And I guess that's the way I can put it, is I practiced it a few times, but I can promise you that as long as that I'm not blocked from getting out somehow, like there's not something that's keeping me, like I don't care if I damage my helmet or if I rip my suit open, if there's a fire, you have to get out quickly. And that stuff, that's what you learn. Helmets can be replaced, fire suits can be bought, race cars can be bought, new seats can be bought, seat belts, all this stuff, but you can't really replace yourself. So you have to take all that stuff really seriously.
What about your seatbelt? I mean, you're secured. Do you have a way of cutting the seatbelt, or? Well,
the seatbelts.
Worrying about you in a fire there.
Yeah, well, the seatbelts are locked into each other, but it's a very quick turn of a knob, and it all releases. It's almost like in your vehicle, you press that button and it clicks out. But in a race car, it's like you have 6 different seatbelts coming all together in one place, and all you got to do is either press a button or pull a lever, and they all come apart. So it was all designed to be able to attach quickly, stay together in a wreck, but also come off. As long as you twist it the right way, it'll come off and you can get out.
Austin.
Go ahead, Don.
How do you prepare mentally and physically for a race? I mean, do you get a good night's sleep the day before? Or, I mean, how do you prepare for it, especially mentally?
Yeah, well, that's a good question. I think there's a few different ways that you prepare. When practice is limited, which it is, meaning you can't just practice every day. Racing is very costly, in the personnel that it takes, and there's certain protocols in place to basically limit as much as possible the car being on the racetrack to make it easier for the people and environment and all these and a lot of other things, costs, parts and whatnot. So you can get on a simulator. Actually, it's a good transition to this, which I'll get into. You can do a simulator, which is basically a simulated race car with a steering wheel, and during COVID, actually, when everything was shut down, NASCAR was actually one of the only sports series to have events, but they were not actually real events. Like this right here is, it looks like it's a picture of, it looks like it's a video of inside a race car at New Hampshire Motor Speedway. But what you're seeing is it's all simulated, meaning it's computer generated, and the drivers, basically the drivers are behind a computer with pedals and a steering wheel, and everything. You're not obviously wearing a helmet, but everything that you would need to be able to control the car, and the racetrack's computer generated, and it drives basically the same as a regular car would. But that's one of the ways that a driver can prepare mentally, was the importance of physical fitness, and most drivers have a certain workout regimen. Part of it is heat conditioning. Inside the race car, it can be during the summer as much as 140 degrees. The only air condition really that you have is pumped through your helmet. So basically everything around you, from your, separate from your face and your helmet, is extremely hot temperature. So being strong isn't as important, but being able to being able to stay in a hot environment with certain movements, like your shoulders, your back, actually, because there's a lot of G forces going through it, your arms, your legs, certain areas of your body that take a lot of stress. I have never had a heart rate monitor. I know people that have heart rate monitors. If you have an eye watch, like certain the watches you can wear show your heartbeat, and there's been drivers that from the beginning of the race to the end of the race, their average heart rate is like 150 beats per minute, and average. Well, that's average, but it'll peak at certain, like some of them, depending on the age, sometimes it'll peak at like 160, 170 and drop off. But you're actually really burning a lot of calories in that, because that's a constant stress on your body for 3 hours, 2, 3, 4 hours in a hot environment. You're sweating, you're losing a lot of body fluid. I might lose 5, 6, 7 pounds in a race if I weighed myself before and after. So you have to hydrate days ahead of time to be able to withstand and not be dehydrated. And even then, sometimes you're dehydrated after the race. I've had to go get IV before. I've had to go, not to the hospital, but they have a place inside the racetrack. Sometimes you can go and actually get IV. If it's going to be a hot race coming up and it's 100 degrees outside, it's going to be 140 in the car. So for your sake, you might want to take the time and just get some IV done, because the last thing you want to have happen is you're out there at middle of the race or end of the race, and you're completely out of energy, because you can't focus when that happens. When you start running out of energy and your body's going away, well, then your mind does too. So it's really important to pay attention to all that stuff.
Austin?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Do you feel you missed out by not going to college, or do you take college courses? And are you in Charlotte right now?
Yes, I actually.
Cruz is racing in Norris. Is it Norris, North Carolina, this weekend?
Who's racing?
My grandson, Cruz Labrie.
Okay, he's racing in Norris.
Yeah, is it Norris? Is that what it is? Norris. He said it's 20 minutes from Charlotte.
Mooresville.
Mooresville. No? Thank you.
Oh, Mooresville. Okay, what's he racing?
Well, he's a go-kart racer.
Oh, I didn't know that. Maybe he's racing at GoPro or something. GoPro Motor.
I don't know.
Speedway, but anyway, yeah, that's. You'll have to connect me with them. I didn't know that, but anyway, there had been times where I had sort of regretted, not going right away, because anytime you leave a break, you start to really lose some information. So when I went back to take classes, the simple stuff that, I was in classes with, 18-year-old kids, and I was one of the older people in the class, and, they're talking about I'm trying to think what pre-calculus maybe or something. And I'm like, holy cow, I haven't seen this in a long time. And the other kids had just come out of high school and it was easy for them. So I would say that I regret it, but I don't. I think it's just how I handled it wasn't necessarily correct. I should have taken stuff right away and just gone according to my schedule and not stop completely. So if it was one class, take one class. If it was two, et cetera, et cetera. But sometimes just taking one class is enough, because if you start adding that up over a period of 10 years, that comes up to a lot. If you take one or two classes a semester or one class a semester. So I would recommend, and I recommend this to some of the drivers that I mentor now, even though they generally push back when I do that. When I recommend that, I say, look, admit it. You have the time. You say you don't, but you actually do have a little bit of time to dedicate to maybe pursuing that education, and keeping your foot in the door is important. So don't, leave a huge gap. If you ever think you're going to need to go to college, you might as well start now, and you can make the decision. If you ever want to leave racing or stop racing, well, then you can go back full time. But I think really part-time is an option for a lot of people.
Yeah, one more question, Austin, and this is what would be your long-term goal? What's the ultimate that this is, I've reached my max? Is it a race? Is it you're still climbing, and at what point do you say, I've reached my goal? This is what I wanted to do, and I'm there.
Well, that's a good, really interesting question. I've thought about it a little bit over the years, and what I've come to the conclusion of is I feel like any goal that you set for yourself, once you've attained it, you have to really be okay with yourself, because if not, then you're going to be disappointed, and you're going to say, that's not enough. What's next? So it can be as simple as, let's say, going to college, right? You go there and then it's like, well, now what? Now what's next? And so I think we all oftentimes have that thought process with life as well. Well, if I won a championship here, that would be it. But then when it happens, it feels good for a moment, but then you're not only yourself, but then you're dealing with the other pressure of external pressure of, well, you have one, well, why don't you should have two, not one. Where I am with that is, I'm pretty happy with what I've done and where I'm at. And so if this is it, then I'm going to have a lot of stories to tell. And then it becomes a discussion where, how can I still be involved in racing and either give back to the next generation, or, and I'll get into this in a second, there's always business opportunities to be involved in ownership, to be involved in sponsorship, to be involved in, the technical aspects of racing. Like I said, I think I hit something that I enjoyed doing several years back, even when I was doing a lot of racing, and that was mentorship and coaching. So, and that does pay. It's as much as I wish I could give it all away. You have to be able to justify that investment in time, because it's an investment in time for me, and obviously throughout the years, I'm making it seem like I know more than I actually do, but throughout the years, there's a huge investment of time and sponsorship and people that have invested a lot into helping me get to this place. So if I'm going to sit down and mentor somebody, that is sometimes, and I would say this even if it wasn't me, that's actually so valuable that you can't even almost put a price tag on it, because of, the idea is everybody's going to make mistakes, but if you can minimize those mistakes by learning from the lessons that other people have made or that other people have learned, that's half the battle. And then the second part of the battle is, do I have somebody to look up to that I can, look to them for guidance or advice, or I'm trying to think of the right word. Are they a good example for somebody that I can base my career off of? And for me, there were certain people along the way that were like that for me, but yet I never had that person that completely put me under their wing. I had to really be my own advocate and get myself to where I ended up getting. And so when I meet somebody that I really like, that has some talent and some potential and has a good attitude, in some ways I am maybe letting them off a little too easy by preventing them from making some of those mistakes. And I actually think that sometimes though that is mandatory to make mistakes and to learn those lessons, because and I experienced it today. I had a conversation with somebody that I was trying to help give them some advice, but they were not receiving it very well. And I say this tactfully, they haven't accomplished much, which is okay. But it was frustrating because I was really trying to help, and I knew it wasn't being received right. And I guess the point in all that is, some people, and I was like this in certain times of my career, are not able or ready to accept information or knowledge. We all have to learn things the hard way sometimes. And we look back a few years later and say, darn it, I took the wrong approach there, but yet you have all those lessons you can bring forward. So I wouldn't be here today if it wasn't for all the mistakes I made. But what came from some of those mistakes was some of the biggest moments too. So I guess it all comes out in the wash.
Good. Thank you. So there's a business side to all of this. I mean, we see sports and we see glamour and but you talked about it a little earlier.
The business side of it is actually one of the more challenging aspects of racing. I would say that 50% of racing is what you can do on the racetrack, and the other 50% of motorsports or auto racing is, how can you be a good ambassador to organizations, companies. Like I've worked with nonprofits. I'm trying to think of certain nonprofits. We during COVID we did some stuff with Feed the County when there wasn't any racing. This is a virtual race that we tried to raise some money. There's different memorabilia that you're kind of responsible for. You have your name on it, but there's a cost to that, and you have to be able to market that stuff. Different nonprofits we've worked with, Travis Mills Foundation, which they're based out of Maine, but pretty rewarding to work with those folks. And Travis, he's a quadruple amputee. You can't see his other arm, but he has one arm there that was missing, and the other one, and then he has 2 artificial legs. So it's that can kind of be the rewarding part of racing and there's the interviews and TV interviews or radio interviews. So I would say that I am not the person that I'm not the same person I was when I left high school, meaning I was a little bit more reserved and shy, but you really have to figure out how can you come out of your shell, because you can't totally be introverted and be in racing. Like, there's plenty of people that are, but you have to be able to access the outgoing part of yourself. And that can take a lot of time for some people, and other people, I guess, are extroverted and they may fit a little bit easier in the grand scheme of things. But sometimes, anybody that follows racing, sometimes those folks are very, very, very controversial, and they might get into fights, or they might say something they shouldn't say on TV, and they get themselves into trouble. So I think I've done a pretty good job at kind of staying in the middle of all that, which for some fans, maybe they don't identify with me because I'm not a controversial person, but other fans, I think I can resonate well with them because of where I've come from, and I guess the ups and downs, like going from being hurt extremely bad to coming back and winning a championship. And there's a lot of backstory there that I like to talk about. And you have, once again, you get die cast cars here. People are buying memorabilia. You've got a lot of different organizations that are part of motorsports. Companies like a company such as this, which is a startup company, and you have, trying to think of other companies, side by side with an insurance company that's nationwide. You have nationwide insurance, and so that's been sometimes the hardest. And I'll say it again, it's been sometimes the hardest but most rewarding part of racing at this high level, is the challenge that comes from having to manage all of these different relationships with people and organizations that have goals for themselves, and some of them have shareholders they have to answer to, and so behind the scenes, it might seem like a driver just shows up to the racetrack and puts a smile on and goes racing. But, like, for example, this picture here, what nobody saw was I came up and I traveled probably 2 days before the race, 3 days before the race, to the local area. And we did some different appearances with the bank, and, went to some different branches and signed autographs and took pictures and did some different radio shows. So it's certainly part of the job, and I had a great time doing that. And it's becoming much more of a part. I mean, I think since probably the late 90s, when NASCAR took off in the late 90s, to a point where it was competing with the NFL. And, I don't think anybody's ever going to knock the NFL off in terms of viewership or, notoriety. I mean, it's America. It's basically America's game. But as far as NASCAR, it took off in the 90s, and companies were beating down the door to be involved and to get their branding across and to reach more people. I mean, Tide was a huge sponsor for a while, not for me, but they sponsored Ricky Craven, which was another Maine driver who's helped me over the years. They sponsored him. I mean, big, American companies and stuff wanted to be involved, because at some racetracks, I don't know if there's a good picture, but in some racetracks, like right here, you can see the grandstands. I mean, that's a lot of people that are there in person. I mean, that's just rows and rows and rows of people, right? That track's a mile long. So imagine a half a mile, if not more, people. In addition, you have the live event that's being broadcast on TV. It could be on Fox or NBC or different channels like that. Daytona 500, I think, gets probably, I don't know, I have to look at the recent numbers, but over, upwards of 10, 15 million, I think, at different times. Doesn't compete, like I said, it's not comparable to the Super Bowl or anything like that, but certainly if you compare it to other live events, it's right up there every week. And I think for people that don't follow racing or haven't, it can sometimes be a little bit overwhelming to put those statistics out there, because in some ways, like, I've had a lot of friends who aren't in racing and they're like, I can't understand how people are involved, or people want to be involved in racing and be a fan, but it's such a diverse group of people now that it's not just based in the South. Like I started this whole thing. You've got drivers from California. You have, the West Coast. There's a lot of activity on the West Coast, the Northeast, the Southeast, the Midwest, different parts of the country, and they all attract different demographics of people. You got kids, you have older people, you have younger people, different minority groups and stuff. There's a huge focus on a lot of the diversity initiatives now. So I think that things are changing extremely quickly, and I'm excited to kind of see it all unfold. I guess I want to kind of start coming somewhat to a close, and then ask for more questions by playing this video that was taken in 2019. I was racing in Pocono, and I had somebody put this together for me. They got some kind of behind the scenes footage throughout the weekend, so you kind of see what it's like behind the scenes. Sorry. So that's sort of a very quick, hour and 17 minutes overview of where I got, to such a high level, and not forgetting kind of where I came from. If it wasn't for that first race at Spud Speedway, I wouldn't be sitting here talking to you right now. I would probably be, who knows where I would be, maybe a state senator or something. I don't know, but anyway, but I'm not ruling that out at some point in the future. I think I might want to get involved in some sort of public service. Without going there, I don't want to open up that can of worms, but I think certainly most people would agree that there needs to be some new people getting involved in politics. But I'll leave it at that, and would welcome questions and feedback or whatever. I don't have any other, I guess, pictures or videos prepared, but I'd be happy to kind of answer just on the fly.
Austin, when is your racing again?
So this, I took the 2020 off. I think that was a very difficult year with COVID and business. And I came off an injury at the end of 2019, and I'm sort of in the process of working my way back in from that. And it was just pairing that with COVID kind of really slowed some momentum down for me. I would say that next year, because plans get made so far ahead of time. Mm-hmm. And so next year is sort of more of a target for me right now. I'm certainly keeping myself busy, trying to do what I need to do to put those plans in place. But hopefully you'll see me out at some point soon.
Any other questions? Well, Austin, thank you. I mean, we really appreciate it. This is your hometown fans. And
thank you, Austin. Before you leave, can I have your email or your cell text so that they can text you this weekend?
Sorry, so you broke up, Donald.
Yeah, what I'll do, Fran, I've got that information, and I'll get it to you tomorrow.
Yeah, thank you.
You froze for a second. I missed some of what you were saying, Donald.
Yeah, I was just saying, I just wanted really to thank you. I mean, you're certainly a hometown hero, and but also what I've seen of you in the last few years, and what you talked about tonight, you're a role model for a lot of people, and especially young people, and you portray yourself very well. You very professional, very down to earth, and certainly the Valley, the state of Maine is certainly proud of you.
Well, thank you. And if I didn't make it perfectly clear enough, I wouldn't be the person I am today. And I've told this to a few people privately and publicly, just about, I think the way that where you come from is a huge part of what drives you, and it some ways helps shape the person you are. So I'm very grateful for that type of upbringing, and where there's some disadvantages that I had to go over hoops to be able to get to where I'm at now, because it was challenging logistic wise, and there wasn't a lot of racing up in the St. John Valley. It made up for it in a lot of other areas. Like, when I'm dealing with people, it's like, well, where are you from? We've never dealt with somebody like you. It's an interesting mix, and I think you hear similar stories from people that have come from a different type of upbringing, and they're able to be successful. And I appreciate the comment there.
Well, thank you again. We really appreciate it, and have a great year. And we'll be looking for your name next year as well. And in the future.
Well, thank you, and I'll be expecting everybody's assignments to be turned in tomorrow.
Oh no!
And I'm not accepting late work.
You're gonna get even with us, Austin, huh?
Austin.
Yeah.
Now, Don Murray is going to give you the theme to senior college. About what?
No homework. No tests. And you'll have to help me down with the third one.
No grades.
Well, what took you so long? What took you so long?
No memory.
And no memory. That's right.
Yeah. Where was that all those years ago? Yeah.
Anyway.
Well, thank you. I enjoyed the evening, and be in touch. You can give my information out, Don, if you
I
need
certainly
to.
will.
Yeah.
Thank you. And thank you very
Okay.
much. And thank you, everybody.
Thank
Yeah.
you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Austin.
Thank you
Thanks.
very much.
Be safe, everybody.
Yeah.
You
Thank
too.
you.
Very good.
Thank you.
We'll see.
Excellent.
77 is giving him a good push. That's Sargent. And Theriault is out in front and he's down to the bottom. Theriault has cleared Jones. He is in the lead at Daytona.